Well, welcome, friends, to the Healthy Christian Leader. This is a great session we're going to be talking about today. I have my friend Rob Laidlaw here today. Rob is pastor here in Halifax, and we're going to be looking at a topic that, Rob, I don't think it gets covered that often in discussions around leader health, but yet it is so vital and so core. The whole topic of pride, and and specifically, we're talking about our inner lives and how we view ourselves, and in light of God and the world around us, I would think. And so I'm ready to jump in and discuss this. And I thought we could start off with the first question here. When it comes to health of a Christian leader, what do you perceive is the most damaging issue?
Well, thanks, Dwight, for having me, first of all. Well, as you've mentioned, I find that really pride is one of the most damaging issues, and that's why we want to talk about it today, is because I think it goes much deeper than any of us really think, consciously anyways. It really distorts everything about our life. Every spiritual dysfunction in our life is ultimately rooted in pride. And it distorts our relationships, it distorts how we approach our ministries, how our work, how we react to people. And so really it's becoming aware of the role that pride plays is I think, really important.
How does it distort who we're created to be?
Well, I think one thing that pride does is it forgets who we were created to be. We forget that we are a created being. And we were even created differently than the rest of creation. The rest of creation, God spoke with a word and boom, it was there. But with mankind, it was a little bit different. With mankind, it says he formed Adam from the dust of the ground. And so really, we are made up of just dirt. That's our composition. There is nothing unique about us, physically speaking, than anything else in all of creation. We're made from carbon and iron and oxygen and nitrogen, all these sorts of things that are just creation type stuff, the dust of the earth. That's what we are physically made of. What makes us different from the rest of creation is the fact that God breathed life into us, and he gave us spiritual life. And so we really have this sense of worth now that is embedded into us by God, but we forget that, and we forget that we're just dust and ashes, and we forget that we're a created being that owes our entire existence to an incredible, loving, and intentional and creative God who designed us and planned for us. And we forget all of that. And as a result, we lose sight of who we are. And that brings a lot of insecurity into our lives, a lot of pride, arrogance, whatever it is. And really what I say to people is, even as we talk about our sense of worth, and our self-worth and all that sort of stuff. That's really, apart from an understanding of who God is, that is really just a distortion of who we are, our value. Our value has to come from me. And so that's where we sort of even say, you tend to think of pride and low worth being on opposite ends of a spectrum. And what we're actually saying is, no, they're actually two sides of the same coin. And so that's partly what we want to help people start to explore, is to the extent that pride plays in our life.
No, that's very interesting, because you're right. The view that we often have of pride is that it's overconfidence and it's over estimation of ourselves and a projection of ourselves, when in reality it's can be so connected to what we struggle with internally.
I mean, this whole issue of low worth, if you think about it, low worth is the declaration that I'm a failure. I don't have value. I don't measure up. And therefore, I am unworthy of love. I'm unworthy of respect, unworthy of acceptance. And as a result, what it does is it causes us to pull back. And I need to protect myself from you seeing my low worth, from you not accepting me. I need to fear your rejection. And so low worth causes us to pull back and to hide. But everything about low worth is a pride issue. It's ultimately rooted in the idea that it's all about me. I need to pull back to protect me. I need to. The whole concept of self-worth, if you think about it, is an arrogance. It says I determine my worth.
Right.
I determine what I think my worth is based on how you affirm me and based on my performance. And so even low worth is rooted in pride. Pride, on the other hand, is someone that's saying, no, I am proving myself adequate. I am proving myself significant. I am proving myself valuable and worthwhile. And therefore, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of respect. And you should view me as being significant. But it's all rooted in our understanding of our performance and how other people affirm us. And yet behind pride is this incredible fear that, I might succeed today, but what about tomorrow?
Well, and it's interesting, it ends up becoming an overstatement to a degree. Like you're trying to, I suppose, shore up insecurities within ourselves. So we kind of overcompensate to a degree, and that's maybe what people pick up on when they perceive a person that they would label as pride. Is it's like an overconfidence. It's like an overprojection.
Well, precisely. I mean, you think about the bully on the school playground. Who's the most insecure person? The bully is the person that fears that he's not significant, fears he's not adequate, fears that people will not respect him. And so he tries to get that significance and that respect through force. And he will terrify all the other students on the playground because that's how he searches out for control and for adequacy and for strength. But it's all rooted in this fear. And that's why we say low worth and pride are just two sides of the same coin. They are both rooted in a deep fear that I am nothing. Because like when Adam and Eve ate that fruit and they broke relationship with God, they broke away from everything God was declaring about them and his purpose for them and his intentions for them. And so this is the whole idea, is that God created us to be his image, his representative, his ruler in creation. But if we separate ourselves from God and his rule and what he wants to do, then if we're not his image, then who are we? And what are we? And so suddenly we've got this incredible void in our life, this God-sized void of inadequacy and fear and where's my significance come from? And so we strive to find it in other ways that just prove to be destructive.
How do you think, now this is kind of a question that comes from the other side of a person receiving an individual with pride. What do you see as a healthier response to individuals you discern that are struggling with pride?
You mean as far as how I relate to them, or how to counsel them, or?
Well, how can we better respond? Like, it's really interesting in the work that we all do. We'll run into folks from time to time where our perception is that they're dealing with pride, and it's very easy to take offense. It's very easy to become cold and distant and back away. What do you see as a healthier way for people that are on the receiving end to individuals with pride? That's just a question that comes to my mind.
Well, I think the first thing to realize is that we're all struggling with pride. First of all, it's not that I'm dealing with someone else who's got pride issues. I am equally dealing with pride issues. I might be more subtle about my pride issues, but I am struggling with my pride issues just as much as someone else. I mean, that's why in Galatians 6:1, when Paul writes, if you see a brother who is struggling in sin, you who are spiritual should go and restore him. But you should do so gently, and you really need to watch yourself in that process.
Watch the beam in your own eye.
Because you might be struggling with someone who's got pride, but you need to be careful that your pride doesn't kick in.
Right.
So I think the first step when dealing with someone that's exhibiting pride or low worth in a way that's destructive to them and their relationships and to you, I think the first step is you just got to guard your own heart first. I know I've gone into conversations with people where I knew it was going to be a tough conversation because they were taking a very proud stance, and it was kind of destructive to the church community. And I was going to have to talk with them, and you know how your mind starts running 100 miles an hour the night before, thinking through what they're going to say, how you're going to respond. And,
yes.
And what I realize I have to do is, man, I have to watch my own soul, my own spirit, and saying, God, you know what? I'm wanting to correct this person. But the problem here is my pride's playing a role in this. And God, I'm wanting to control this person and this situation. I want it to go a certain way. But Lord, I don't need to. I don't need to defend anything. I don't need to prove anything. I just need to be who you want me to be and to love that person the way you want me to love them on your behalf, regardless of what they do. And so God, would you humble me, and would you then help me to go and show loving truth to the person, and to hear and to listen, and then to help them, if I can, to also deal with the issues in their life. But I have to be aware that I've got issues in my life in the process of trying to help them with their issues. So that's where it's really tricky. Like, I think it's so easy for us to look at someone else and see someone else's pride or their low worth and their relationally and social dysfunctional issues. And I'm a little bit blind more to it in myself.
No, this is very, very, very good. How does pride destroy our relationships? We've kind of touched on it in this conversation, but...
Well, if pride says, I need to be somebody, well, how do I determine whether I'm somebody or not? And the only way I can do that is by comparing myself to the people around me. And in some way, when I do that little comparison check with all the people I'm thinking of, I need to somehow come out on top. I need to somehow validate myself and prove myself more significant than those around me. And so what pride and low self-worth do is either one, it's fight or flight. Pride is either going to cause me to fight, or low self-worth is going to cause me to flight. And so low self-worth, it destroys relationships because people are never being authentically themselves.
Right.
They're always hiding.
Right.
They're always avoiding. And so...
Even behind things like flattery. I've watched, individuals where there's insecurity, they'll often just go on and say fluff and flattery rather than getting to real issues and real conversation. And there's avoidance and all kinds of things that happen.
They're people pleasers.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. They avoid conflict because conflict might say that you are not as lovable because you're failing in some way. And so how many people in our churches and our congregations are people pleasers? How often am I a people pleaser? But what is people pleasing? People pleasing is me trying to figure out how I can manipulate you to give me the acceptance and the affirmation I'm looking for. So a people pleaser, as much as they would tend to come across as being someone who navigates peace and conflict and stuff like that. No, what they're actually doing is they're avoiding conflict, they're avoiding working through stuff, they're avoiding authenticity, because they're trying to manipulate their own security, their own safety, their own and affirmation and acceptance of other people. So people pleasing isn't really people pleasing. People pleasing is really me protecting me. That's the root of it. And I'm just trying to figure out how I can maintain peace so I feel safer and good about myself. And so again, it's pride, it's arrogance. It's really about me. On the other side, aggressive pride, I mean, that says to people, I can't consider who you are. I need to think about who I am. I need to make sure I'm built up, that I am affirmed. Well, then people become barriers. Either you're someone who affirms me or you're a barrier to my significance. And so pride says I need to put myself first above and beyond you, because I need to make sure that my significance is taken care of. If my significance is taken care of and I feel good about myself, then I can serve you and then I can build you up. But someone who's struggling with pride can never put someone ahead of themselves. Because they need to be affirmed. They need to be respected. They can never be wrong. They must win. But again, that's complete insecurity.
So it's really two different issues, people pleasing and pride, but they come from the same root.
Same root of fear that I'm nothing.
Yeah. Right. And it can, either way, it can be a destructive thing.
Completely destructive. Every relationship tension you have is a pride issue. Because if you didn't have pride, if you weren't trying to defend and protect self, and yet you trusted that God was going to meet all your needs, then you don't have to fight for anything. You're then free to actually even love your enemy. See, you can't love your enemy if you're demanding something from your enemy, if you need something from your enemy as far as affirmation and respect and love and acceptance. Well, if they're not giving that to you, then pride kicks in, and either you avoid them or you try to manipulate them to give you what you need. And so as long as that fear is in your life, then you cannot authentically and truly love and serve others. The reason Jesus told the disciples, hey, as I'm washing your feet, you're to wash others. What he's saying is the greatest in the kingdom is the greatest servant. And the reason that the greatest in the kingdom is the greatest servant is because the greatest servant understands that God meets all their needs. They don't have to strive after anything for self. They don't need to prove anything, defend anything. They can just be who God created them to be, representing what God wants them to represent in serving and loving others on his behalf. And that is completely freeing. But how many of us are there, really? Right? All the time.
So, obviously, all of us as we're listening to this are going to identify with this in our life at some varying different levels, right?
Yeah.
Because as you've shared, we all have some degree of insecurity in some element in our life. So what is the solution? Like what steps can we take as leaders to become healthier? God calls us to humble ourselves. Like, what steps can we take?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is to, one, remember who you are. Job's whole issue, if you remember Job's story and his suffering, his whole issue was forgetting who he is and who God was. And at the end of Job encountering God and what God had to communicate, Job's response is, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed, because basically I'd forgotten who you are, and I'd forgotten that I am but dust and ashes. And he literally says that, I am dust and ashes. He goes right back to Genesis and realizing that, who am I? Apart from God, I am nothing. So I think that's a starting point, is just to remember who we are. But then Scripture keeps telling us over and over and over again to humble ourselves. The problem is, how can I humble myself? So to be honest, I think it's actually technically impossible. because it is so deeply wired into our DNA of who we are, our sin nature. But I think as we allow Jesus Christ to come into our lives and we allow him to put to death our old nature, we can start that tension of releasing that searching for glory, that searching for significance, that searching for acceptance. And we can just come to a point saying, God, help me to remember that you give all of that to me. It is, you have placed a value on me. I have value not because of anything I do. And that means I don't lose my value because of my failures. So God, you've placed a value on me and it's written in stone. And I cannot change my value. I have no means to give my self-worth. The whole concept of self-worth is a complete fabrication. We can't give ourselves worth. And no one else can either. We got to remember it comes purely from God. It's something that he places on us. And if I understand that God has already placed a value on me, and that I'm significant to him, and I am loved and accepted by him, as I allow the Holy Spirit to do that renewing in my mind, then I can let go of the control. Because we're all control freaks. Even low self-worth, hideaway people are all control freaks. They're controlling how people view them and how they are confronted with failure, all that sort of stuff. But as I let go of the control and I submit to Jesus Christ, then what I can do is I can actually start looking at people differently. And I can start seeing people through his eyes, and I can start respecting them. I can value them. I can attribute worth to them. And so I think that's, again, where I can take steps to say, I'm going to start serving you. And I'm going, even if you're my enemy, even if you're against me, opposed me, I will serve you with the love of Jesus Christ. And I don't need to defend or protect. I'm just here to be Jesus to you.
So as we step towards this whole idea of humbling ourselves, which, as you've already stated, it's not a switch we can turn off because it connects to our inner being. It seems to me that as we submit to God in this area and begin to move from the surface level of our life and become self-aware and God-aware and have reflective time, it seems to me that would be really helpful, but the journey of healing in God's presence would be a huge step towards the development of humility in our life.
Yeah, and to realize that God uses suffering to expose our pride. God uses confrontation to expose it. He's not the author behind the
I like that.
the temptation,
Yeah.
but or the evil, but he will use broken relationships. He'll use physical health. He'll use things like that.
Yeah, so we can really use, when we become self-aware of pride raising its ugly head in our life, we can see it as a flag of hey, there are internal issues. There's the need to pause. There's the need to move from the surface life to the inner life. And
yeah, the only challenge is that pride will not let us acknowledge pride.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too.
Okay, so how do you acknowledge that you are struggling with pride? And so I think there's some indicators, like whenever you're feeling frustrated or angry or annoyed or fearful, you got to understand you're feeling that things need to go a certain way for me to have life.
Right.
So some of these things that we experience can be good red flag indicators to get us to stop and pause. So when I experience frustration now with something, I know right away I'm dealing with a pride issue. I'm frustrated with that person because they're not meeting my expectations. And I realize, okay, and it's not necessarily that what they're doing is good or evil, but it's evoking a reaction in me that is pride-centered. And so sometimes just realizing those things, when the painful scenarios come to play in my life, it's a good time to pause and think through. Yeah. Yeah, I'm dealing with some pride issues in the midst of this. I wouldn't have known it on the surface, but as I look deeper, it's really about me and how I feel and what I think.
Rob, this has been such an incredibly interesting topic, and I know we're going to get a chance to carry it on and have some other elements of conversation around this whole topic of pride, because it's so relevant and important as leaders to address in our lives. So I really want to thank you for coming in today and having this conversation. And I'm really looking forward to our next conversation that we have as we continue on in this discussion. So, friends, Rob Laidlaw, Pastor Rob Laidlaw from here in Halifax, and we will see you next time on The Healthy Christian Leader. Well, today's conversation was fantastic, but we're not finished yet. We'll be back in the next video with the same guest with more discussion about leader health. You know the drill. Subscribe and hit that bell. Would you join us for the next episode? You can find new episodes every week in video form on the Aaron Ministry YouTube page and in audio form as the Healthy Christian Leader Show wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leaders. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more resources and information on how to donate or to start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.